What's up, everyone? Welcome to the channel. Today's video is going to be all about the Season 5 close range meta. I spent literally all day on this, went through all the data, and tried to come out with the best possible weapons for you guys to use in Season 5 as your SMG, as your close range option. Not going to waste any time. Let's jump straight into it and start talking about all these weapons. So it seemed like you guys really liked the format of my meta videos last season, so I tried to kind of go with the same sort of idea here, where I made a big table of all the things that I think are important. And then kind of ranked them. So that's what this is. First off, before we get into the weapons, let's talk about what the different columns are that I'm defining different things as here. So TTK at 7 meters, that one's obvious. That's just the TTK at 7 meters with combination shot location percentages, just the standard percentages on TGD at 7 meters. And then drop 1 is the number of meters for the first drop off for that SMG. Drop 2 is the number of meters for the second drop off for that SMG. Then we get this new thing on here this time that I've been kicking around in my head for a long time. So if there's any people that are really into math that are watching this, and they can tell me if this makes sense as something to do or not. Basically, this is the integral of the TTK up to a certain distance. So up to 14 meters now. If you don't know what an integral is, it's basically just like summing up the area underneath the curve. So this is an example here. This is the PPSh, just a specific example to show you guys why I did this. So it's not fair, in my opinion, to just look at 14 meters and just look at 7 meters, because if there's 2 drop-offs, then there's some little segment in the middle. Like for this PPSh, these are the distances on the bottom: 5 meters, 10 meters, 15 meters. Last month, I did just 7 meters and just 14 meters, and I didn't really feel like that was fair for guns like this, where they actually had a drop-off in the middle. It didn't include that at all. So I only saw 7 meters, only saw 14 meters. And I wanted something that kind of included all of it. So what this does is basically it multiplies this TTK, looks like about 595 milliseconds here, by 7 meters. So that's what this red box is. So that you'd multiply those two numbers together. Then you'd multiply whatever this TTK is, looks like about 640 milliseconds by however wide that distance is. So it looks like from about 7 meters up to like 11 meters. So it'd be like 4 meters times 640 milliseconds. And then from 11 meters up to 14 meters, you'd multiply by this TTK. And that kind of does a lot of things. It's kind of just like a weighted average of the TTK out to your specified distance. And I think it's interesting because it will include those drop-offs and include the magnitude of those drop-offs, and kind of give you a like overall kill potential up to that range, that 14 meters range. So this might be something, if you guys like this and you think this makes sense. Obviously, if this gun had a long drop-off, then you'd see a lower number because this would be extended out there, and then you'd miss this little section, and this little section wouldn't be included in that math. So I think it kind of makes sense. I think it's an interesting metric to add. I don't think it's like a full story, like you need to see everything involved in the gun, but it's just an extra little thing to help you make a decision about something. So I might actually add this to TGD if you like it, as a chart that can be generated. So it'll be the integral of the time to kill, or DPS. But anyway, back to what these different things are. Accuracy at 30 meters, this is essentially just, like aiming at a window at about 30 meters, like the percentage of shots I felt like I could put in that window with a build that was built how I would want to build the gun in game. So it's not just the attachments that you see over here, the required attachments. These accuracies would be with included attachments for how I would want to build the gun in game. And then we've got different information about the magazine. So mag size, fire time, and DPM. Mag size obviously is the number of bullets. Fire time is the total amount of time in seconds that if you're holding the trigger down, the gun will fire. I think that's important just because even if you have 71 bullets, sometimes you can have really fast fire rates and your fire time can be lower. So it just seems like sometimes that's an important thing to think about as well, not just damage per mag. And then always classically, damage per mag is a very important stat. So we've got that on here as well. And then RPM is just the higher the RPM, the more forgiving. Like if you go off the target and you miss a couple shots, it's more forgiving to have a higher fire rate, because as soon as you get back on the target, you're going to be putting damage on them immediately rather than having to wait for the next shot if it shoots slower. So that's kind of the logic behind all these different columns. Kind of just going to go through them and explain what I think for different guns. And then obviously we have the attachments that are required to get these time to kills, because for most Vanguard guns, the only things that would modify your time to kill would be these slots. So that's why those are included there. And then TTK is always the most important thing to start looking at, in my opinion, for an SMG. So that's why they're all sorted by TTK at 7 meters to start with. But let's start going through this weapon by weapon. Okay, so first up, Type 100 still hasn't been changed. It's still the time to kill king. It's just crazy how fast this thing kills, and it has a drop all the way out at 17.5 meters. So that's why you're going to see this summed up TTK out to 14 meters is going to be dramatically lower than everything else. That's because it doesn't have a drop inside 14 meters. So it's like the minimum integral that you could get. The only other gun that has no drop-offs inside that drop-off or inside that 14 meters is the H4 Blixen. And again, I picked 14 meters arbitrarily. Like 7 meters is like the close range that you're going to be engaging with an SMG. And then 14 meters, like you're going to have a lot of fights at that range as well, which is why I felt like it was important to include both. And I think that most of your fights will be inside 14 meters. So that's why I think this integral that shows kind of like the time to kill potential at any point inside that 14 meters is kind of a cool new metric to think about. But yeah, the reason the Type 100 wins that is because it just has the best time to kill and there's no drop off inside that 14 meters. When I add this to DGD, I'll probably put like a start point and an end point for where it's going to sum up those time to kills. And then you guys can pick whatever you want for that. So you could pick starting from 5 meters up to 20 meters, sum up all the TTK inside there and see what those numbers are. So for this, it was just literally from 0 to 14 meters is what the TTK integral was. I don't know if that's the best way to do this. This is just kind of preliminary thoughts on this new stat. Accuracy, the Type 100 is pretty accurate, but it has a really small mag, really bad fire time and small damage per mag, but still quite a bit higher damage per mag than some of the other guns we're going to see here. Moderate 875 RPM fire rate. Next up, you've got the Armaguerra. So the Arma pretty much is the only option right here. Is this row is the only option that has really fast time to kill of all the weapons in this entire list that still has a really big mag. So you get the 72 round mag and you're firing at 935 RPM. So you have huge damage per mag, phenomenal time to kill at 513, but you can see the drop offs are pretty short, 8.4 meters for the first, 13.6 for the second. And that leads to over 1,000 higher TTK integral out to 14 meters than the Type 100. So for this Armaguerra up here, that's the body 315 with the Russian 34 round, has slightly faster time to kill, but you only get 34 rounds and the fire rate's 1,069. So it runs out of ammo instantly. And there's really just no reason to use this over the Type 100. So I would say just if you're considering this build, just use this Type 100 instead. But like I was saying, this row 6 here, the Arma with the body barrel, the Kurz 72 round drum or 72 round mag, hollow point, and recoil booster, phenomenal time to kill across the board. Just a pretty good option. It has pretty bad recoil, but it's mostly visual. So I found with this, like my screen was shaking all over the place, but the actual recoil that I had to control was not too bad. So I think in SMG ranges inside about 20 meters, really you're going to be okay with this. So I do think this is a pretty solid option right now. So with Season 5, the PPSh actually got a very nice buff. The 8mm Nambu 71 round mag used to decrease your damage, but it no longer does. So now it just increases your fire rate and reduces the recoil. So that's a really big buff there. And you can see that with that magazine now, it has the 4th fastest time to kill at 534 with the rapid barrel, and then the 6th fastest time to kill with the 230mm barrel, which is actually the hip fire barrel as well. It just reduces damage. This barrel reduces damage a little bit, so that's why it has a slightly slower time to kill, but it's only 14 milliseconds, basically negligible. And you get the benefit of having amazing hip fire pretty much no matter what else you put on the gun when you use the 230mm barrel. And everything else is very similar between the two. So all things considered, I would say the 230mm, I think it's Kovalevskaya barrel, that's going to be your choice for the PPSh, in my opinion, over the rapid barrel. Because they're really, really similar. You just get the added benefit of having amazing hip fire with a 230mm barrel. You can see that it has pretty short damage range, 8.3 meters and 10.5 meters for the second drop. And that's a big inspiration for putting this TTK integral in there, because both of its drop-offs were inside that first 14 meters, and they're very close together, whereas a lot of the other guns only have one drop-off, some of them have none. I just think it's important to kind of include all of that information in one number, and that's kind of what the TTK integral is doing for us. So you can see that it has pretty high TTK integral. Even the one with the faster time to kill, the 534 millisecond time to kill, which is slightly faster than the RA225 that we're going to talk about in a second. Because it has two drop-offs so short and so close together, it's actually quite a bit worse in terms of TTK integral than the RA225. But back to the PPSh, we got 71 bullets, so it shoots super fast, 1237 rounds per minute with the rapid barrel, or 1313 with the 230mm barrel. So even though we have 71 rounds, we only have 3.2 seconds and 3.4 seconds of firing respectively. And decent damage per mag, 1670. It's kind of just middle of the pack. It's not like a huge amount, and it's not a super small amount. But compared to like the Type 100, you get an extra 300 damage per mag for both of these, which is pretty good. But that is really not that much. Like the Type 100 already was a pretty difficult gun to use because of that small damage per mag. So getting an extra 300, it's like an extra, 15-20%. That's nice, but it's not like dramatically more. You'll see some of these ones later on that just have huge damage per mag. All right, RA225. Made a video about this gun yesterday, so not going to talk about it too much, but basically it has two different options. You can use the Gorenko 38 round mag with the rapid barrel recoil booster and hollow point, or just the rapid barrel recoil booster and hollow point with the default 55 round mag. It's kind of an okay gun. It's not great. Doesn't really stand out in any way. The 38 round mag only has 900 damage per mag because it shoots so fast. It has 1100 RPM with only 38 bullets. So you get really small amount of damage per mag with the Gorenko 38 round. And again, it's one of those things like, I feel like if you're going to run this, you should pretty much just be using the Type 100 instead, because the Type 100 is just going to beat it pretty much everywhere. It has more range, better time to kill, better damage per mag, similar mobility. The RA probably has slightly better movement, but really I just think you should use the Type 100 over the RA with the Gorenko. Next up we have the Sten. So the Sten with rapid barrel recoil booster and hollow point has a really good 569 millisecond time to kill, has 12.8 meter drop for the first drop, and then 20 meter drop for the second drop. Because it has such good range, it has a good TTK integral, competitive up with the PPSh 71 rounds, just because, again, it has that much longer range. So that's why I think this is an important stat to look at. If you ranked this in terms of the TTK integral, it would actually be in fourth, or in fifth behind the RA. But overall, pretty solid in terms of damage output, all the way out to 20 meters. It's going to be a really good choice. It's very accurate, has very little recoil at 85% accuracy for my testing. If you really want to know for sure, you're going to have to go try these yourselves, because I play on mouse and key. A lot of you guys are probably on controller. Different things affect this, not just input wise, but just being different people. We're going to control certain guns better than others because they have unique recoil patterns between all of them. So really, you're going to need to rank them yourself if you want to see how accurate they all are for you. But these are probably a good baseline. The Sten does have a 50 round mag, so it's not huge. Fits in right with that PPSh damage per mag, so it's a usable amount, but it is on the smaller side compared to some of the other options. 844 RPM, so kind of a lower RPM as far as SMGs are concerned. But it's really just fantastic all around. It doesn't really have any weak points. The only problem with the Sten right now is that when you sprint with the 50 round mag, it covers up your camera in the center of the screen, which can be pretty annoying. But honestly, besides that, it is definitely one of the top picks for like an all-around, easy to use, good in every way SMG right now. I think I mentioned this in my RA225 video, but the RA with the rapid barrel recoil booster hollow point is extremely similar to the Sten with the same attachments. Basically the same time to kill, has slightly less range than the Sten, which leads to a slightly worse TTK integral than the Sten. Has worse recoil than Sten, but a slightly bigger mag. Slightly worse damage per mag, slightly higher RPM. It's really similar just across the board to the Sten, but I think the Sten really does edge it out a little bit. The only thing the RA has over the Sten is pretty much that mag not getting in your face when you sprint. So rank that how you will, but for me personally, I would pick the Sten over the RA225. It's still a good option, but I just think that there's some better things out there. So in my Season 4 Reloaded Close Range Meta video, I basically said that this was my recommendation for most people. This is the Armaguerra with the Emerito 550mm recoil booster, Kurz 72 round Vital, and then you can build it kind of however you want after that, because that gives it really good time to kill and really good recoil. Obviously the time to kill is not as competitive as some of the other builds here, so the Arma with the body barrel, the PPSh, those are in the lower 500s. The Type 100 is slightly below 500. So an Arma at 578 is not hugely competitive in that sense, but it's just really good everywhere. So very easy to control. They did nerf the recoil a little bit on this barrel in Season 5, but it's still very accurate. Doesn't feel a whole lot different to me. You get pretty good range. That's a 10 meters for the first drop, 16 meters for the second drop. Like I said, extremely accurate. So this is the most accurate gun on the list for me. Pretty close to the Sten, pretty close to the well gun, but overall just very accurate choice. It has a huge mag, 72 rounds. So this is great for trios and quads. gigantic damage per mag at 2400, which is just huge compared to everything we've seen so far, except the other 72 round Arma. So overall, it's really just hard to beat this gun for most people. There's a few other good options like the Sten. PPSh is also very good right now, but just as a general all-round great weapon for close range, I think the Arma is still pretty hard to beat. The Arma also has the absolute best ADS strafe speed of all the guns. So the reason for that is the Sten and the RA both have phenomenal ADS movement and ADS strafe speeds as well. But in order to get these good competitive time to kills, you have to use the rapid barrel on the Sten and the RA, but that's not the case for the Arma. So the Arma, you can use the short barrel, which gives you, I think it's like an extra 20%, 20% multiplier. So it's 1.2 on top of all, 1.2x on top of all the other attachments that help with it along the way. So it's even more than 20% when you're stacking attachments. So that's a huge difference compared to the Sten and the RA. So I think this is still the best choice for strafe speed as well, if you want to build it that way. The rest of the numbers are pretty much the same. The recoil is obviously going to be quite a bit worse because you don't have that 550mm barrel that helps so much. But everything else is identical. Still a fantastic option. In Season 5, the Marco caught a pretty big nerf. I think it was a 2 damage nerf in the first range. That's pretty significant for an SMG, especially because that first damage range is the most important. This was the most competitive Marco I could build. This was on the list last time I made this video, but it was all the way up the top in terms of time to kill, and now it's down towards the bottom. So I really just don't think the Marco is very competitive anymore. It does have the best movement still, but the time to kills just aren't great compared to some of the better options. And then we've got the H4 Blixen, which again is going to have really good movement as well, kind of similar to the Marco. It's going to have slightly better time to kill, much longer damage range with the Johnson barrel than the Marco. The Marco is down at only 7 meters with this build, so it's just crazy low. You can see this reflected in that TTK integral again. It's 1,000 higher, like 10% higher than the Blixen, just because that damage drop off is so much worse. Accuracy wise, the Marco, this should probably be a little bit higher. The Marco, well, I guess it's because that body 240mm barrel, that makes it have pretty bad recoil actually. And the other barrels don't help with the time to kill as much. The Johnson barrel also gives the Blixen pretty bad recoil, but if you're using this in SMG ranges, I think it's worth using that because the damage range is just crazy. 15.2 meters, having that same 602 millisecond time to kill is great for that Blixen. So I would recommend that. But overall, both these guns are kind of okay. I wouldn't say that they're going to be meta. Like, I think the Arma and the PPSh and the Sten really are going to be pretty much the meta this season. But yeah, the Blixen and the Marco are okay still, just not the top choices. And then the well gun kind of sneaks in here as well. This is a well gun with just default magazine, so you don't even have to have a barrel. You don't have to have a magazine. So recoil booster hollow point gives you 620 millisecond time to kill with better range than the Marco. The TTK integral is actually better than the Marco's at 9100 instead of 9300. Much more accurate, same size mag, bigger damage per mag, worse RPM and worse mobility. So again, these are decent options, but I just think there's some better choices out there. So we've gone through all these one by one now. What really stands out to me? Some of the best. So Type 100 right off the bat, definitely one of the best. For solos and duos, without a question, it is the best choice right now. It's just ridiculous. You get crazy time to kill, crazy range, pretty good mobility, pretty good strafe speed. It's the best choice for solos and duos, pretty much hands down. If you want to go beyond solos and duos with it, it's still okay. I use it with sleight of hand, and I've used it in quads a bunch. Still love it. You just kind of have to be smart about your movement and the fights that you take, because you have to pick off one person at a time, get a reload in, pick off another person. So that can be a little tricky, but you just kind of have to alter your playstyle a little bit. It does work okay. The Arma with the 72 round mag, the body barrel, the recoil booster, and hollow point. This one stands out to me as being the only gun on this list that has ridiculous time to kill up close and still really big damage per mag. So you can see that over here on the right in the damage per mag column, the only gun that stands out in the first like 7 or 8 time to kills with high damage per mag is this one. So for trios and quads, if you can learn to control this really visually shaky recoil, I think this Arma is going to be okay. It's going to be a little tough just because of that visual recoil, but overall, really good time to kill and just a very competitive gun in every way. Another standout, I think, is this PPSh with the 230mm barrel. I talked about this before, but I think the 230mm is better than the Rapid. Even though it has slightly worse time to kill, you also get the benefit of having phenomenal hip fire. So this makes the gun just pretty much good everywhere. And the recoil is not too bad, 71 rounds, so it's got really good damage per mag. It's not really good damage per mag because it shoots so fast, but it's competitive damage per mag, and it's good enough for any game mode. And then another thing that stands out that nobody really uses is the Sten. So if you want something that people aren't really using that's actually really good, I think the Sten's an absolutely top choice right now, pretty much tied with the Arma as like the easiest to use all-rounder kind of gun. It's going to be much easier than the Type 100 to use because of damage per mag. It's going to be much easier than the Armaguerra to use because of recoil. It's going to be easier than the PPSh to use because of recoil. So it kind of just stands out as one of the best choices right now. And then last up, the two guns from Season 4 Reloaded, my previous video that I said were, some of the absolute best. These two Arma builds are both phenomenal. The Imerito 550 for a low recoil, easy to use in every situation kind of gun. And then the short barrel if you want absolute maximum ADS movement and ADS strafe speed. Okay, let's go through the recommended builds for those top weapons I just covered, starting with the Type 100. The required attachments to get that amazing time to kill: recoil booster, rapid barrel. You need the 36 round Russian, and then you need the hollow point as well. So those are the 4 required attachments. And then how you build these things really after that point is going to depend on how you want to play. So this thing can actually have really good strafe speed as one of its builds. It can have decent recoil if you want to stack attachments for recoil. So it's hard for me to tell you, this build's the best for everyone, because that's not how it works. Like literally, if you're someone who's bad at controlling recoil, then you should put recoil attachments on this, even though it's going to hurt the gun in other ways. If you're someone who's good at controlling recoil and you want good strafe speeds because you can use that to your advantage, then you should build it for strafe. So it's hard for me to condense all this down into one build, so I'm really not going to try to, honestly. So if you're someone who struggles with recoil, hand stop for sure. I like hatched grip just because it tends to help with both vertical and horizontal. Just a solid option there for that. So this is going to be more of a recoil dedicated build. Gung Ho no longer allows you to fire while sprinting, or no longer allows you to have 0 sprint fire time, so it's not really worth using anymore in my opinion, especially if it's not a hip fire build. So we're gonna go with Fleet just for mobility reasons, quick for mobility reasons. And then the Warabachi Skeletal or the Folding are both decent, but for a recoil build, we're gonna go with the Folding stock just because it helps with initial recoil and doesn't hurt anything else. This build's gonna have really good recoil. This is probably an easier build to use for most people if you're interested in trying this gun out. And then I pretty much always use the slate reflector. So this is the recoil build, but then if you wanted to use this as like an ADS mobility build, then you just swap this out for the compact, swap out the rear grip for grooved grip. You actually leave this stock the same because this is already the ADS movement stock. And there you go. Now you have a gun that has insane time to kill. It's going to be a lot more bouncy than that previous build, but it's still going to have, good time to kill and ridiculous strafe speeds. So I think those are kind of the two probably top builds for the Type 100. But obviously adjust these as you need for what you like to play. Like I know a lot of people are looking for just like, a specific build. This is the best build. Well, I can't really do that because there's infinite builds out there basically, and every player is different. So how you play the game, just select the attachments that make sense for that after you get the ones that are required for those good time to kills. Alright, so this is the Armaguerra that stands out to me as the only really big damage per mag, so trios and quads, while still having phenomenal time to kill in close range engagements. So we've got recoil booster, the 315mm barrel, hand stop, the 8mm Kurs 72 round hollow point. So these 4 are the ones that are required: hollow point, the 72 round Kurs, the 315, and recoil booster. Those are the 4 that are required. But like I said, the recoil is very visually shaky and just pretty bad in general on this. So in order to combat that, I do think you should stack some recoil attachments on this one. A little more straightforward than the Type 100. So we got hand stop on there to help with recoil. We've got groove grip because groove grip not only helps with horizontal recoil, but it's also going to help with that strafe speed. It's just a great attachment for SMGs in general. ADS strafe speed is a really important stat for SMGs. And then instead of running like mobility, I want to put hard scope on perk 1. Just because the recoil is really bad on this, and sometimes you have your SMG out and somebody's at pretty long range and you can't swap to your AR fast enough. So I'd recommend hard scope there. And then as for every SMG, we're just going to use quick in perk 2 slot. And then as far as stocks go, because the recoil is bad on this, we don't want to use the folding stock because that hurts recoil. The Perfetto standard hurts your movement speed, and the movement speed's already not great on this because of that 72 round mag. It's just pretty slow already, so I wouldn't recommend using that stock either, even though it helps with recoil. The skeletal stock is okay, but it does hurt your sustained firing recoil, which is already really bad on this gun. So again, it's kind of like I wouldn't really recommend that. And then the body DA, which is the last stock, hurts your movement speed. Again, movement speed's already really bad on this. So I just like to run this without a stock. It's just that the cons of all those stocks just really aren't worth putting them on there to me. It's not worth the trade-offs. So I think in some cases that actually works out with the SMGs and Vanguard where you just don't use a stock. And I think this is one of those cases. All right, onto the strafey boy Armaguerra. So this is just the Arma built for absolute maximum ADS movement, ADS strafe speed. This thing's crazy. You can dodge bullets with this build. So we got the short barrel, the compact underbarrel, proof grip, steady for firing strafe speed, skeletal stock, and then just the standard attachments for good time to kill. Besides that, recoil booster, 72 round curs, and then the hollow point ammunition. Overall, hard to use, very bouncy recoil, but for somebody who gets up and just plays really aggressive, this is going to be a phenomenal gun just because you can dodge bullets with this, and the recoil is not going to matter too much when you're up close. But overall, probably for most people, this won't be the best choice. Just if you're someone who loves those strafe builds and you don't care about recoil too much, absolutely give this one a shot. Now, I'm pretty sure I said this last time in the previous season's meta video, but pretty much you just take this exact same build and plop on there the 550mm barrel instead of the short barrel. You're going to have much worse strafe speed and a little bit slower movement, but that makes the recoil so manageable that you can just beam people out to like 40-50 meters with this. And you still have good strafe speed because you have all these other strafe attachments on there. So I think for a lot of people, this is going to be one of the absolute top choices just because it's really good everywhere. Good strafe speed, good time to kill, good range, and just phenomenal recoil. So you can just fry people when you accidentally have your SMG out for engagements that are a little bit too long. All right, so on to the PPSh. Like I said, the 230mm barrel gives it fantastic hip fire and a huge boost to fire rate. So we've got that recoil booster, 71 round Nambu, hollow point, and then the recoil is pretty bad on this still, even after those 4 required attachments. So we put Carver on there. This helps with both recoil and your hip fire, which is pretty good because we want better recoil, and because this is pretty good at hip fire, we want to kind of maximize that and make it really good at hip fire. We've got the slate reflector. You can use whatever optic you want. That's just the one I tend to like. I really like hatchet grip as an attachment. This has really bad horizontal recoil, especially to start with. The recoil pattern goes up to the right really hard to start with, and then straightens out. So we want to minimize that as much as possible. Hatchet grip tends to be one of the best choices for horizontal recoil. So that's why we're going to select that. It just has no cons. It's just a really nice all-around attachment for recoil. And then tight grip on the PPSh is huge. So as I've said 3 times already, the recoil is really bad on this thing. So tight grip is massively helpful. Literally cuts the recoil basically in half on this gun. So I recommend using that over fleet. You can try fleet if you want, just better mobility. But for most people, I think the better recoil is going to be a better choice. Then we use quick, obviously. And then for stock, again, this is another case where I just don't really want any of these trade-offs. I don't want to make my recoil worse, and I don't want to slow my movement down at all. So those are kind of the 2 trade-offs usually for these stocks. So really, we're just not going to use a stock. That's just personal preference. I just kind of don't like any of the cons on the stocks in a lot of cases on the Vanguard SMGs, especially if they have bad recoil. So for me personally, not going to put a stock on it. But this is really good. This is a great all-around gun right now. Very fun to use because it has that crazy high fire rate. All right, last up, we've got the Sten here. Again, the Sten is a gun that's just good pretty much no matter how you build it, as long as you have these 4 attachments on there: recoil booster, rapid barrel, 50 round drum mag, and then hollow point. Really good time to kill, really good recoil no matter what attachments you put on it. So you can build this for movement speed, you can build this for ADS strafe speed, you can build this for hip fire. The hip fire is not going to be great compared to something like a PPSh because there is a hip fire barrel, but it's just not going to be worth using over the rapid barrel. You just need this for that fire rate. So really, I'm not going to give a recommended build again for this. You guys can build it however you like to play. If you want to play for, maximum movement speed, then put movement speed attachments on this. If you want to build for ADS strafe speed, just put ADS strafe speed attachments on this. It's great in every single way. The only issue is that this mag really just gets up in your face when you're sprinting, and that's a bit of a problem. So overall, huge recommendation here. This is one of my favorite picks for this season, and it's a sleeper. So if you're someone that likes to use something other people aren't using, that's kind of how all this started for me. I loved finding an edge before TGD even existed, for better guns that people weren't using. The Sten's going to be one of those right now where very few people are using it, and it's going to be competitive in most situations. All right, everybody, super long video, but I hope you found it really informative and interesting. I've got a link in the video description to this comparison on TGD. Only like 10 guns are allowed on TGD at once just for processing reasons. So you're only going to see like the top 10 on there, but if you want to see that, just click on that link. It'll take you to TGD and we'll build out this exact comparison with these attachments on all the guns so you can look at all the different things yourselves. But yeah, hope you enjoyed the video. Hope it helps you out with Season 5. Hope you have a good day, and I'll see you in the next video.